Well, hi, and welcome to podcast number 13. And this one is called Uplifted with the Breath of God. We're talking about how to get in that flow of God. It's that Holy Spirit flow that comes from the throne that we can drink from it, but we can also live in it and live by it. And today we're going to talk about a great way to stay in the flow, to stay in the river of God and live from that place. So today we're going to look at one account, and that is the account of Jesus when he went up into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. And we're going to look at the very first temptation and how he managed to stay in the flow in that situation. You know, the enemy is always going to try to get us to get out of the flow, to get out of walking by the Spirit, to get out of the nature of God, and to think something other than what God thinks. And I want to show you how Jesus was able to navigate this trickiness that the enemy uses sometimes to get us tricked out of the flow. So we are going to start in Matthew 4:1. Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And after fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. So first he fasts for 40 days and 40 nights. He doesn't eat. In verse 3 it says, "And the tempter came to him and said, 'If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread.'" So the first thing the enemy says to him is, "If you are the Son of God." And that is we just got to know that is like the number one trick that he tries to do. And that is to get us to question who we are. In 3 verses prior to this verse, "And behold, a voice from heaven said, 'This is my beloved Son, with whom I'm well pleased.'" So God just said, "This is my Son, whom I'm well pleased." And then he comes to be with the devil, and the devil says, "If you're the Son of God," like God just said that, like 3 scriptures before that. He just said it, and now we're getting question on it. Well, if you are, well, that is just what he likes to do. He likes to just question who you are, question who God is, and question what God says about you. And I want to show you 3 points of why logic would tell us Jesus should just go ahead and do this. Logical point number 1. Jesus had the ability to do it. We know that in John 2:1 through 12, that he actually turned water into wine. And those people weren't even thirsty, really. I mean, they'd already had a bunch of wine. So it wasn't even like a good reason. It's just because his mom came and asked him, and he said, "Okay, I'll do it." And he turned water into wine at this wedding. So it wasn't wrong to turn stones into bread, because we know that that was in his ability to do it. Logic point number 2, he was hungry. So this actually would just solve his problem immediately. He's hungry. He can turn things into other things. He can turn things into food. In Matthew 15, it says that he fed a multitude with fish and bread. And he used a miracle to do that. So this was not outside of the possibility that he could do this. And he actually did do it later on. Logical point number 3. If he did this, he could prove who he was. He could prove he was the Son of God. In John 20:30 through 31, it says that Jesus did many signs so that people would believe he was, quote, "the Christ, the Son of God," end quote. So it wasn't wrong to do a miracle to show people who you are, because in his ministry, that's what he did. And it's recorded in John 20. So let's go on and look and see at his decision, because we know from other accounts that he has done similar things for similar reasons. So let's find out what he did. In Matthew 4:4, he answered, "It is written, 'Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God.'" So he didn't do it. He did not turn the stones into bread, and he did not prove to the devil that he was the Son of God by doing what the devil asked. Now, I know that he didn't do it for one reason. He did not have permission. And the way I know this is because there are 3 different scriptures in John that talk about how he made decisions on every single thing he did. The first one is in John 8:28, and he says that I can do nothing on my own authority but speak just as the Father taught me. It also says, I always do the things that are pleasing to him. So he only spoke what the Father told him to speak, and he didn't do anything on his own authority. So we know that if he did not turn the stones into bread, he did not have permission. He did not have God's authority to do that. I also know because in John 5:19, it is recorded, he said, the Son can do nothing of his own accord, but only what he sees the Father doing. For whatever the Father does, that the Son does likewise. So obviously, the Father was not turning the stones into bread. It was a no from the Father. No, you are not going to do that. So he said, whatever I see the Father doing, I'm going to do. The Father wasn't doing it. He didn't do it. So what did he say back to the devil? What was his response? It was that man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. You see, what he was saying was that my physical body, my comfort, my hunger is not more important than what comes out of the mouth of God. The breath of God is more important to me than my own comfort. And if God is saying right now, no, we're not going to turn the stones to bread, we're not doing it, then he says what's more important is what comes out of the mouth of God. And that is how I know he heard God say, nope, we're not doing it. We're not going to do it. And he was good with that because what was more important to him was pleasing his Father, because he knows his Father has his back. And that's what it gets down to. The devil was trying to trick him out of the flow, out of the will of God, out of alignment with God. He was trying to do it. And God said, nope, this is where we are, right here, right in the middle of the flow. We are not going to do it. And Jesus trusted him, even though he was hungry, even though he could prove who he was. He trusted God, and God says, nope. And he's like, more important to me than my own comfort, than my own getting some bread in my mouth, is pleasing the Father, is the words that come from his mouth. Then Jesus trusted him that he would make a way, that there would be some other way. And actually, at the end of all the temptations, an angel came and ministered to him, probably brought him some bread. I don't know. I don't think it says how he ministered, but there probably bread was involved. So you could get bread by doing what the devil is trying to get you to do, or you could wait on God and say, no, if God says no on this, then it's no. I don't care if I'm hungry. He has another way. I will be taken care of. And that is a big, huge key to staying in the flow. Sometimes to stay in the flow, it might be uncomfortable. But we have to trust that if this is, and we know this is what God's saying, this is what his word is to us, then we stay put. We're not going to go after something over here that says, ooh, look, you need this. Look over here, you need this. What about this over here? You'd get what you need, and you'd prove who you are. You see, the thing that it comes down to, and I know this is why God said no, is because if Jesus would have fallen for that, he would have had to become selfish. He would have had to think about, hey, I can do that. I actually can turn the stones into bread. Like, that is possible. I can do it. But he said, I don't do anything with my own authority. So even though he could do it, he waited on God. There's the key right there. Just because we can do something, if God says no, and we know he says no, then we don't do it. We just don't do it. We trust him that he has something better for us. Maybe he's got an angel that's going to come bring us bread and take care of us. We don't know, but we know that if he's asking us to do something that may be uncomfortable, that he has a plan, and that we just trust him on that plan. Now, I know this might sound hard, like how are we going to know what God says? But that is the beauty of being in the flow, is because as we stay in the flow, we are going to be like Mary was at the feet of Jesus. We are going to be listening and attentive to what he's saying and what he's doing. If we're all, this is another reason. This is another reason why we can't just get so busy about being busy that we don't stop and say, wait a minute, what are you doing? Are you doing this or am I doing this? Maybe I'm just doing this on my own. Maybe I'm trying to make this happen. And maybe it's not happening because I am not staying in the flow. I am not being patient. I'm not waiting on the Lord and hearing what is he doing. You know, Jesus said, I want to please the Father. That was his commitment to take a stand to only do what pleased the Father. And in that, the Father took care of him every step of the way. Jesus gives us an excellent example of how to stay in the flow. And to do it, we need to know, what does the written word say? And we need to know what does the spoken word of God for the moment say? What is God saying now? And we just want to stay in that sweet place of his will, of his heart, of his breath. And then we will be able to have that river flowing in us and through us, actually bringing heaven to earth. Why? Not because we had a great idea and we used our logic, but because that's what God said to do. And so we stay in that place, that flow, and that alignment with him.